शीप्रेन्योर शक्ति के हमारे आज के एपिसोड में आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। आई एम योर होस्ट श्रेष्ठा वर्मा and today I have with me Miss Sonal Ramrakhiani. She is the President of Sales and COO of Global Vertical of Automobiles at Tata Technologies. वैसे सोनल एक डायरेक्ट एंटरप्रेन्योर तो नहीं है, लेकिन उन्होंने अपने 24 साल के करियर के दौरान टाटा टेक्नोलॉजीज में बहुत सारे वेंचर्स को ग्राउंड जीरो से शुरू कर एक काफी सक्सेसफुल स्टेज तक पहुंचाया है। आज की हमारी इस खास बातचीत में सोनल से जानेंगे उनकी पूरी करियर जर्नी के बारे में और किस तरह से एक महिला होने के तौर पर उन्होंने सभी चैलेंजेस को ओवरकम करके अपनी जर्नी को पूरा सक्सेसफुल बनाया। शीप्रेन्योर शक्ति में आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है सोनल।
थैंक यू सो मच श्रेष्ठा।
क्योंकि विमेंस डे का मौका है और विमेंस की लाइफ में बहुत सारे चैलेंजेस भी आते हैं, तो आई वुड रियली लाइक टू नो फ्रॉम यू हाउ हैज योर जर्नी बीन सो फार।
जर्नी के बारे में जब मैं बात करूं तो बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग जर्नी रही है मेरी। पिछले 24 साल से आई हैव बीन विद द टाटा ग्रुप and I worked across multiple group companies, various cross-functional, cross-industry roles, and it's been a very, very exciting phase. And what I've really enjoyed has been the entire, ability to be close to customers and, really understand what their needs are and solve for that. So something that's been very exciting for me. But when you're asking about the journey, I'm sure you don't want to know only about, the corporate and the work part of it, but also as a woman in the corporate industry, what my experience has been. And it's been absolutely fantastic because, in my own approach, I always think of myself as a person first and then wife, mother, sister, daughter, all of that later. The reason for that is that that's the way that I've always, lived my life, and I've been trained and coached, and, that's how my parents brought me up. So in terms of, my day-to-day interactions, that's what I bring to the table, that ability to think of me contributing as an individual, but also at the same time understanding where other people are coming from and how others interpret certain actions, whether it's men in the corporate world or it's other women in the corporate world, or somebody who's senior and somebody who's junior, and I'm able to really understand to some extent, I would say, not perfectly, but what makes them tick and what makes them thrive. In terms of ensuring what I need to do every day, and you will understand, it's a question that gets asked very, very often. Right? सब लोग पूछते हैं कि आप मैनेज कैसे करते हो, सीनियर लेवल पोजीशन पे हो, बच्चों को कैसे मैनेज करते हो, घर को कैसे मैनेज करते हो। और मेरा जवाब एक ही होता है, which is that every day you have to go through a prioritization. Some days you will end up, when my kids were small, कभी बच्चा बीमार हो जाता है, you can't really plan for that. Sometimes there's an urgent meeting, you have to prioritize that. And I would, sometimes it's easier than it sounds, but sometimes take each day as it comes. You still have a long-term plan, you still have an end goal, and it's not like you're living every day just planning only for that day, but there is a prioritization for that day sometimes that you need to put in place, and that really helps you navigate and manage some of these stresses that come through, especially in certain stages of life. Somebody told me that eventually what happens is बच्चे बड़े हो जाते हैं, or your systems get set, or you get a certain sense of backup and things like that, and social infrastructure, and that also makes a big difference because that it's a journey, and that journey is not going to be the same every day, but a year or 2 years down the line it's going to be very different. So that's something that I always tell other women to consider as they are planning for their working lives.
You have not been in the startup ecosystem directly, but at the same time Tata Group has some really amazing ventures, and you have led some of them, successfully led some of them, I would say. So how has been your experience in that zone, and how have you actually managed to start it from ground zero to taking the venture on a stable stage?
In the corporate world, there's all of us are actually indirectly, of course, there's an interaction with startups, which means that some of our customers are startups. So we get to see them very, very closely. And in Tata Technologies, there's a lot of work that we do both on the established OEM sides as well as some of the new age companies, because we believe that it gives us a really good balance of access to technology and access to the entire approach as far as the industry is taking. So we work quite closely with startups, and it's important to know that with the startups, there's a very different agility that's required. And what we do exceptionally well is bring that agility to the table, or a maturity of processes, which is what a traditional OEM may be requiring. So that's just as far as, our overall approach is concerned. So when we're working with startups, there's an element of agility, there's an element of bringing your best practices and bringing your structure and helping them meet their goals. Very often that goals is, how do I get to something, typically a launch of a vehicle in the shortest time possible. The funding is obviously critical, and therefore managing the funding also. So that's something that we do well by making sure that we align our teams, work on a global model, and ensure that there is mutual success ensured for the project. Having said that, I always tell people that, even in the corporate world, you could be in a company, but you could be in a startup environment, right? Which is that, sometimes there are things that you have to do in a more agile manner. There are sprints that you need to do. There are small projects within the company that you could be executing, which are almost like, you need to have a startup mentality to be able to execute on those. And that's something that we bring to bear. I do that quite actively with my teams. Sometimes you're in a turnaround situation, you don't have time for a very long plan. You need to demonstrate things fairly quickly. Either it's in a customer interaction situation or it's your own operations. And that's something that is almost like a pseudo startup kind of environment, and very exciting to be part of.
आप टाटा ग्रुप के साथ एक काफी लंबे समय से जुड़ी रही हैं, 24 साल, जो कि अपने आप में ही मतलब इट्स मोर देन 2 डिकेड्स। तो जाहिर सी बात है कि आपने बहुत कुछ एक्सपीरियंस किया होगा कॉर्पोरेट वर्ल्ड में, और टाटा अपने आप में एक बड़ा नाम है। तो आपने जो भी चीजें एक्सपीरियंस करी और जिस तरह से आप सक्सेसफुली वहां पर 24 साल बिता सकी, तो उसमें से क्या कुछ पॉइंट्स और क्या कुछ बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस होंगी जो आप स्टार्टअप्स को एज अ टिप देना चाहेंगी, जिससे वो अपने वर्क प्लेस पर एक इंक्लूसिव एनवायरनमेंट ला सके?
It's a very difficult question because it can have various nuances. And those nuances can be, what I always tell people is, know what you stand for, right? As a person, as a company, what's your brand, even as an individual and as a company. And फिर वो जो brand है, वो हर element में हमें उसको bring alive करना पड़ेगा. In our interactions, with customers, in the product branding, in how you design your product, and the product would be, like in our case in Tata Technologies, a service as well. So we have to make sure that employee interactions में भी वही आता है. एंड जब मैं इंडिविजुअल हूँ, तो मुझे भी सोचना चाहिए कि मेरा वो ब्रांड क्या है. मेरा ब्रांड कई लोगों के लिए, फॉर एग्जांपल, टेक्निकल एक्सीलेंस हो सकता है. कई लोगों के लिए हो सकता है कि मैं कस्टमर की बात सर आंखों पर रखूंगी, वो मेरा ब्रांड हो सकता है, राइट. कई लोगों के लिए हो सकता है कि मैं एम्प्लॉयज को अपने साथ हमेशा लेके जाऊंगी, एंड दैट कुड बी योर ब्रांड. तो वो हर एलिमेंट में आपको फिर वो हैट पुट ऑन करके वो ब्रांड एलिमेंट को ब्रिंग अलाइव करना पड़ेगा. सो दैट्स समथिंग दैट आई थिंक ईच पर्सन हैज टू डू. एंड आई थिंक दैट्स दैट वन बेस्ट प्रैक्टिस दैट आई वुड कॉल आउट when you are working in any corporate for a longer term. What do you stand for, what do you represent, and therefore what do you bring to the table is what comes alive. And what you bring to the table could be external, could be internal. Like I said, it's with your employees, it's with your supervisors, it's with your peers. It's that whole experience.
You have made a great life for yourself, and but I'm sure that the journey wasn't always as smooth as it is today. So क्या कुछ वो challenges रहे आपकी journey में, and how did you actually manage to overcome those challenges?
So Shrestha, what happens is there's always challenges in life, right? That's what I guess makes it fun. I've always focused on getting beyond that challenge and looking at what is that learning that I'm getting? Why is this happening in a certain way, and what am I going to take to the take forward from it? Challenges could be any, sometimes you're working on deals and you could lose, business. And then you wonder, I put in my best or I did all that I had to, and why didn't it work out? But there's a learning in it. Sometimes it is about things that could have been managed differently, right? Similarly, there could be challenges in the home environment where, you're struggling with the kind of bandwidth that you have, things that you need to work on. I already talked about prioritizing and taking that to the day, to the next day and the day after. But I think as a person, I focus more on the learning and what I need to do to move ahead rather than, getting stuck in and thinking of the negative of the challenge. That itself is a different mindset, I think, because some people don't look at it that way. So it's always a question I struggle with because, जो बीत गई वो बीत गई, अब वो challenge नहीं रहा, वो learning हो गई.
You mentioned about your kids, you mentioned about your family. So I can definitely make out that you are a homemaker as well as a successful corporate as well. So what is that one key which helps you to manage both the roles efficiently?
I think it comes to a lot of women quite naturally, which is this ability to multitask. And like I said, to be able to really prioritize. Uh, as a person, again, I feel very awkward when somebody says you're successful. Success is just, it's relative. I bring my best to, to my work life, to my home life every day. And that for me is what is success. It's the benchmark that I set for myself versus a comparison with others.
After looking at your achievements, I can definitely say that you are an inspiration today for many. But आपकी जर्नी में भी कोई एक ऐसा रोल मॉडल, कोई एक ऐसी इंस्पिरेशन रही होंगी.
It's not one person, right? It's many, many people. Lots of women, lots of men also who have inspired me. When I look at my mother, she was a homemaker, as you say, which is exceptionally talented in terms of, her ability to get people together. She's almost like, I used to say CEO material. And so she's somebody who inspired me early in my life. There's so many teachers, who brought their best. And even now, I'm in touch with some of them and they talk about, some of those learnings that I had as I was with them. So there are teachers who inspire me. There are people in the workplace, that I've worked with who inspire me. My daughter inspires me, with her ability to stay calm. My son inspires me with his ability to be very focused and, go after what he wants. My husband inspires me with everything that he looks at and, thinking about long-term potential. There's so many people. My father's played such an important role in my life in terms of, his positivity and always making sure that, that I was focused on being the best version of myself and providing a very, very positive environment. So that's, as far as home is concerned, I've given so many examples and schooling is concerned. And when I flip it to the work environment, right, every single supervisor, every single team member always has something special, and you learn different elements from different people. You learn either visionary leadership or you learn execution skills, or from some of your team members, you could learn an element of positivity. And that's what, those nuggets are what I take from people. And that's what I really like telling, others when I share this, that's what inspires me. It's not, this one perfect individual that I'm learning from or who's inspired or mentored me, but it's really an amalgamation of all the people that I interact with.
बिकॉज हम शीप्रेन्योर शक्ति सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हैं और वुमेन्स डे का अवसर है, सो सोनल मैं चाहूंगी कि आपकी तरफ से एक मैसेज मेरी फीमेल दर्शकों के लिए जो आप वुमेन्स डे के अवसर पर देना चाहें.
Just bring your best to whatever you do every single day.
तो ये थी हमारी आज की शीप्रेन्योर शक्ति. इन्होंने हमें बताया कि किस तरह से आप किसी भी रोल में, किसी भी सिचुएशन में अपनी तरफ से बेस्ट देकर अपनी जर्नी को एक सक्सेसफुल स्टेज तक ले जा सकते हैं. ऐसी ही और शीप्रेन्योर शक्तियों से मिलने के लिए देखते रहिए टाइस टीवी. And yes, do not forget to subscribe our channel to get latest startup updates. Also, you can visit www.tice.news to read enticing startup stories.